Right here has to be the one that he was burned in the Corvette crash in 2004.
When I realized that Dad was gone, and the noise coming out of me that I can't recreate.
When famous NASCAR driver Dale Earnhardt passed away so sad, in 2001, the racing world came to a stop when I realized that Dad was gone and noise coming from me that I can't make again. Fans and rivals both paid tribute to him and his history seemed to have stopped, but it wasn't. After many years, when the doors to their own garages were opened, and the full picture of the man who started the story, what they found wasn't starting to come out. Mostly just a bunch of cars and awards. It was a message in a bottle from a long time ago. Work that was carefully kept, and what lay inside didn't just remember him, it shocked everyone by showing a side of hardly anyone ever saw. Let us see what they found in Dale Earnhardt's garage. The story behind the garage before anyone went inside the private garage of Dale Earnhardt is his legacy. Was carved into the NASCAR track. Dale Earnhardt wasn't just a NASCAR driver. A NASCAR driver who was known as the man who scared people. He made a reputation for driving aggressively, never-ending competition, and a no-nonsense attitude that made he raced stock cars for 26 years. A long time ago, he won 76 Winston Cup races. Wins and 7 titles, linking him to Richard Petty and then Jimmy Johnson, but a lot of people liked him. Earnhardt represented after the racetrack something that is very American: tradition, grit, and self-made success. His fans didn't just like him, they agreed with him, whether it was his blue-collar image of his famous black No. 3 Chevrolets or his unwavering dedication. Dale Earnhardt was a sign of how to win American strength. And yet even the many die-hard fans didn't know what was waiting for him behind the closed doors of his garage, a part of Earnhardt that would only be made public after he died. And everyone was shocked when he died during on the last lap of the 2001 Daytona 500, that there was shock all over the world. Tributes came in from people who saw it happen live in black. No. 3 stickers showed up on bumpers and helmets all over the country. He was no longer famous, but his memory was born again. But what many people didn't know, not even close friends and crew the whole time people, was how deeply Earnhardt had worked to keep his own history alive at the Dale Earnhardt Incorporated DEI, especially in his facility and privately owned garage. Lay decades of and things related to his job that he had kept it. Was kept secret from the public. Only a few people were trusted to step inside. His public legacy was already well known, but what they found in garage after he died added a whole new part. 1. What no one saw coming when the garage door was opened. What found when Dale Earnhardt's doors were opened finally. Private garages were opened after family and friends didn't know what to expect when he died. Members and longtime friends went into the space with a mix of with respect and being interested in what was inside. Had been mostly untouched and locked away from public view. Even while Earnhardt was still alive, he didn't like to brag. Certainly not when it came to private things, but when the lights came on but when the dust settled, what they saw shocked them. It wasn't just a garage, everyone. An individual museum that has been carefully a collection of things that are almost holy, that were most important to Earnhardt. Inside were races that had never been seen before, been shown to the public. A 1957 Chevrolet shining under the hanging lights, several race cars that are real vehicles Earnhardt had driven in famous NASCAR events parked along the walls. Exactly how many were placed next to the what awards did they help him win? What stood out right away, though, was how on purpose everything looked like this. There wasn't a mess of memorabilia. The things were put together in a way that made sense. A story about more than just great races, but of the driver helmets were next to the race cars that are still dirty from track dust, jackets with old sponsor patches, and a frame pictures that were never shown to the public. A vintage Wrangler sign was on the wall. Nod to one of Earnhardt's first big sponsors. A different area shown something even stranger. A forklift with Winston Cup stickers all over it. It was a strange sight in a place where, but it said something about car racing legends, about his personality. Even while Earnhardt was serious, he also made time for humor. As they went deeper, the atmosphere changed. A room behind the main one, that is quieter floor, held a wonderful surprise, a space fully devoted to his grandson's toy cars, early racing suits, and small trophies. Showed that Earnhardt had plans for a lot more than just his career. leaving a mark on the very shape of his world. As an insider who toured the garage after he died reportedly remembered a moment from years ago earlier, when Earnhardt talked about the garage with a strange amount of feeling. "I left everything behind," he had said. It looked like a short sentence about storage, and now that I look back, it was more of a quiet the fact that this place held his life, his story, and maybe even his farewell. It wasn't until the whole stock was once that was done, the scope became clear. It wasn't just a stash of toys and games. It was a record of NASCAR history. History through the eyes of one of its most important, the greatest champions. It was a very personal picture of Dale Earnhardt, one that no one talks about in public or TV tribute had ever been able to do. To catch people who thought they knew what was found in that garage after he died made them look once more. It wasn't about money or prizes. It had to do with intent, memory. That's why everyone was shocked. But before anyone really understood what Earnhardt had left one car behind, drew right away. Take a look at the crown jewel, the 1957 Chevrolet. Among all the things found in one car drew Dale Earnhardt's garage attention right away. A 1957 Chevrolet, carefully kept and clearly identifiable, loved the most. It was a beautiful one, of those classic American muscles to it. Was something for people who knew Dale, more of a sign of where he came from, and the 57 Chevy is an icon of what drove him. On its own, it's tough, sleek, and filled with post-war American hope. For Earnhardt, having a wasn't enough. It was about keeping a rare car. In his mind, that he had grown up around Chevrolets. Neither was his father, Ralph Earnhardt. Worked on these kinds of cars in the garage in Charlotte, North Carolina. To Dale, the 57 model was a symbol of the time. That made him who he was when everything smelled like oil and ambition. Compared to the stock cars that he drove for a living, Chevy wasn't made for the track, fixed up perfectly but not too much. Every part of it, from the two-tone paint job up to the chrome trim and old-fashioned logos, talked about moderation and being real. This wasn't a sign of wealth or power. About making the past come alive for his own mechanics of nostalgia, who later looked at people in the vehicle, were shocked by it. The engine had been in perfect shape. It was cleaned but not replaced, so many original parts still in place on the inside. Leather seats that were worn down, original with only minor changes. Earnhardt, they hadn't made the car look great. It looked like he kept it real. Something you'd see at a car show on Sunday in a small southern town that isn't hidden in the garage of a multi-million-dollar home. NASCAR visitor, what really caught their eye was the putting the Chevy in place wasn't done in the corner, right in the middle. Lit not by accident but on purpose. Around it was pictures of Earnhardt when he was younger. Years of honest pictures of him at work on like cars when he was young. It almost felt like a temple to his youth, to the things that had made him who he was. There were no signs, no plaques explaining what it means. Anyone who had one didn't need one. Looked at Earnhardt's life and work. It was clear that this was where it all began. Began a long time before fame, and there was this: a simple sponsorship's love of fast cars and the thrill of driving in a garage full of race cars for $1 million and rare and valuable items. The most emotionally powerful thing was a car. You used to be able to buy a lot for a few thousand, which is why this Chevy wasn't. It was only a small part of the collection. At its core, the one thing that deeply told the whole story from the story of the cars he kept going to find out about, a racing life that has been preserved. NASCAR race. Dale Earnhardt didn't have any cars, so the garage wasn't not just a place to store things, it was a vault of track history, and that was more clear than in the rows of the original NASCAR race cars are carefully kept up. Just the same as the last time he saw them, they were told these weren't copies, or these models were real and ready for a museum. Machines that have wear paint scuffs and sometimes track dirt still holding on to each cars. Undercarriages were a part of Earnhardt's career that was frozen in time. The well-known black Goodwrench No. 3, the Chevy Monte Carlo, is the car closely linked to his legacy. Stood with pride in the lineup and not polished to a mirror shine, but the kind of shine that's raw and real, of state that told you it had been well used and liked. Along with the No. 3 was a car from when he first learned to drive for Wrangler jeans that are still wearing its with blue and yellow paint. This was the vehicle that helped him become known to be a tough but fearless competitor in the 1980s. There was a machine parked next to it from when he raced as Richard Childress. It was one of his 7 Winston Cup wins. The specifics of the championship seasons, the preservation was hitting tires where number plates for race days were left mounted intact, not even sponsor stickers were faded from age didn't change, so there was room. A scary thing they were if authenticity hadn't kept them, as each of the relics was an important part of his life. Part of a life he had worked hard to keep alive. They were not meant to look brand new and shiny. They were supposed to tell a story. One of the stories they told had a crack in it. Window from a particularly a rough short track battle. Another had the front bumper slightly out of place from a late race tap at Bristol. In a legends in the world of racing are boiled down to numbers and sound bites. Fans and family had something to enjoy with cars. Noticeable a direct link to Earnhardt's gritty and glorious things that made the collection. What was even stranger was how big it was. Not many drivers were able to keep their real race cars after a career. Most of them are thrown away, reused, or given to teams. Hard, on the other hand, had quietly bought, and he kept them for a long time, as if he knew that one day, they'd be more important than lots of people in NASCAR realized that were asked to check out the garage after death. Everyone was shocked and amazed. Not only at the collection but also at how it was planned. This wasn't a man who he told as a story without words. The being of these vehicles showed us something Hard rarely showed in how people felt about him. Didn't keep these cars because he kept them because they were important to him. He thought they were markers that show battles have been fought and memories that were carved out of metal and rubber. What was discovered in that garage after death shocked everyone, but not because it was there, but it was hidden in plain sight. A racing life full and kept safe by the hands of people who lived. The trophies showed it. What a wonderful life he'd lived longer than medals. And while the cars in Dale Earnhardt's garage told the story of the races, trophies showed what people had won. Shelves along the walls that were neatly lined up, and even the tops of some cars. These shiny artifacts didn't just mean wins, they stood for the times that helped him get where he is now in his career. They got some from big races like all of the Talladega, Bristol, and Darlington when Earnhardt dominated other tracks, from less well-known events. But what shocked him was less important to him. It wasn't just the number of visitors, it was how each trophy was set up next to the. It wasn't just any car that earned it, was telling a story through things won. There were a bunch of awards in the corner. Through his 7 Winston Cup wins, these were the best parts of a career made up of consistency and raw, not only determination, but even among these there were signs of peak performance. Smaller pieces that were more personal and stood. Pull out a simple plaque from an early job dirt track win, a thank you frame from a. These weren't items of a local sponsor, a lot of money, but they clearly weighed in on what really shocked. All of them knew what these trophies were. Treated, not polished to a shine or protected by glass cases, but easy to get to. Hard didn't show them off to brag. Showed them to remember. Some of them were, a few were slightly tarnished and had small dings, but they were just the way he had left them. Care for them, but don't treat them like fragile artifacts. Behind one, this particular car looks rough. Monte Carlo was a. The trophy is on a wooden base and is made of brass. Plate worn down by time stuck next to it was written by hand, and the message was short and almost mysterious, but still worth it. No one was sure if it was Earnhardt's writing or someone else's, but where it goes next. That beat-up car made the point. It's clear that sometimes the hardest races brought the most benefits, even if no one else outside the family understood why. Awards are made of metal and wood, but for not Hard, each one told a story. That's why they weren't willing to sacrifice. They were hidden in boxes, shown like family photos, not just accomplishments, but signs of who he was. It was clear in this garage the trophies were more than just reminders of he won, because they showed what he had to work hard to get there. But the discoveries didn't end there. Tucked away among the things you might expect to find from a stock car driver was a weird shocks, the strange and unexpected among the old cars, medals, and a carefully chosen race history. In the garage of Dale Earnhardt, a few things stood out in very different ways. Why these weren't polished or sad, they were out of place and didn't fit in. Still, they were a good reminder that each person has their own quirks. Legends is one of the most talked about. Found was a forklift that was covered in. I put Winston Cup stickers on it and parked it in a back corner half hidden by 2 races cars, and the forklift wasn't changed or after being fixed up, it looked like it had been used. Worn paint, scuffed wheels, and everything else. The Winston Cup stickers were put on with covering the frame for things like racing stripes. To some people it was funny, for others, it was a small nod to Earnhardt's having the ability.